Good morning. I wanted to talk a little bit today about copyright in old games. As I've researched recently, old video games on many new Chinese handheld gaming doodads, as I call them affectionately. There's little tiny handheld gaming units that play video games, and they usually are loaded up with quite a few old school from the days of like the early Nintendo and Super Nintendo and early Sega years. They're basically games from then and even earlier, So they're ancient games that are basically would fade out of existence had it not been for these retro gaming handheld units to bring them back alive. And so I've researched this whole because every time you research the handhelds themselves, there inevitably comes the point where the person will talk about the legality of the copyright of the games that are on the system. And so I've really looked into that, and I've seen, okay, what's the problem here? Is really gamers just a bunch of thieves, and that's what copyright's protecting, this and that? No, that's not what it is at all. What it turns out is, first of all, in the United States, copyright goes for like, as long as something's in use, there's a copyright attached to it from the person that created it. If that person no longer cares about that thing that they copyrighted for 20 years after its use and they have nothing to do with it, let's say they even died and they just forgot about it and didn't want it anymore, that copyright patent goes to the people. It becomes public property, public domain, as it should be. People should not have to stop using toilets because the copyright of the person that created the toilet died and took the copyright with him. And we can't copyright a toilet, right? It's just not how it's supposed to be, right? So, in essence, when the copyright owner, person, whoever's benefiting from it, doesn't want it for more than 20 years in the US, it becomes basically public possession. Now, I started thinking about this for a minute, and basically, video games that go out of vogue, that are no longer played, no longer popular, whatever, they just go by the wayside. They fade into an oblivion of nothing. They go to a black hole. And I started to think about what other things could this be similar to? And I thought about art. What about art? Because video games very much are art. They are art. Video games have always been described as art. They are artistic depiction of our world in a digital way. Now, art, you could argue that if there were no museums, the art would fade into oblivion the same way that video games would. That same feeling that you got when you looked at that piece of art on the wall in whatever museum, and you got that feeling, it carried on for generations of people to come and look at and get that feeling because a museum housed it and took care of it and properly put it in a safe and made sure that bandits and vandals didn't steal it and fires didn't burn it and water didn't ruin it and they took care of it. There's that one thing that doesn't exist here, care. So they took care of the art. And so I see anyone who puts out a gaming website that puts out for free old video games that no one's making a profit on and the copyright has expired long ago. That is art that they are saving, and they are patrons of the arts, saving art the same way people do in museums. We call those the patrons of the arts, and they save arts of all different kinds, and they save them for future generations to get that feeling from, to admire. And the same thing is true with video games. So I applaud all the Chinese handheld gaming manufacturers who are keeping alive these games as they ship them out to millions of adoring fans, such as myself. And I've learned to go seek out websites that house these works of art, I will call them, because they are now valuable to me. I don't want to see them fall by the wayside by any means. And I would gladly pay for them if the owners or the copyright owners had asked me to. That's the other part of this conversation that we don't have in this whole discussion, which I have not seen this discussion anywhere online. I can't find anyone to discuss these things because everyone's so afraid of the legality and getting sued. But it's a discussion we need to have. Gamers are not thieving criminals trying to turn a buck on games that they put out for free on websites that they pay for and don't make any money on. It's a ludicrous. It's a ludicrous to even think that. So instead, let's think about the reality. And the reality is websites that put out old software that the copyright has expired long ago and no one's making money from are patron saints of the arts that are simply putting out art for future generations like myself, my kids, and their kids to come and enjoy those video games someday when the time comes for them to experience it. And so really, this everything I'm describing shuts down any argument of gamers being thieves by downloading an ancient software no one cares about so they can privately entertain themselves. I mean, dude, there's absolutely nothing illegal about downloading old video games. Like, I see no problem in this at all. It's basically human beings enjoying an experience of art at their own leisure that they download through a new medium that we just didn't have 100 years ago, you know? So we're going to have to start thinking of museums as going online. Online museums. Think about that. Things that are created digitally will be kept in these online museums. And right now, the first that we're seeing of these are websites that have very old video game software that some soul is just trying to preserve. I found an actual physical location of this in Oakland, California, in the United States. And in this locale, this individual took his own funding, his own money, his own resources, and created a literal video game museum. You come in, you sit down, and for 20 minutes, you play games on an old Atari 2600. Things that you can't find anymore, you can sit down and play in this museum and get that feeling. I could take my kids there. I could let them play that and let them get that feeling. Amazing. Patron saint of the arts in video games. I applaud that individual. I wish to support that individual. I'm all about video games. And if you are too, then definitely think about supporting museums online that keep our precious games for our children for generations, because that's all it is. No one's making a buck. People are spending their own hard-earned dollars, to buy these games. If the maker of the game or the patent wants money, absolutely. Come to me and give me a channel, give me an avenue to pay you. Nintendo, if you want to make money off games off the Nintendo and the Super Nintendo, give me an avenue. I will gladly pay for things that you have created, and I will respect your copyright. But as a gamer, if you no longer care about those and you have just flushed the copyright down the toilet and give it no attention whatsoever, and you're not making money off of those, and I want to play them and experience them, I have the right to. They are works of art I wish to carry on in your name, in your favor. In the future, someday, I'll show my children this game by Nintendo, and my great-great-grandchild of the future will say, "Hey, Granddad, what's a Nintendo?" And I will explain to them. If Nintendo doesn't want to squash the museums that house their ancient video games, because they put out quite a few. When you churn out consoles like a Nintendo does, you got to expect waves of games to just go into oblivion. Where are they going to go? You can't manage them all. So the patron saints that actually manage these old games and allow them to be like museums online, I think is a wonderful, wonderful thing. And this really puts to rest any kind of argument about copyright infringement for old games. If it's a newer game and you're making money off of it and you have a copyright, I respect that. Give me a channel to buy it and I will. A lot of these places want to say respect our copyright on these games, but don't give you a channel to actually pay them for it. And that's not right either. There has to be a channel for me to pay and a current interest in the patent and the game itself. Otherwise, if those things are debunked, I have every right to go download what I want off of the internet because I am helping to preserve these works of art. Not only does the place I got them from have them, but now I have them. And if everyone gets them, we all have them. We can keep art alive for as long as we wish. And that's the beauty of art. Transcends time, transcends people. Fine art transcends everything. It is timeless. It is peopleless. So let's work together in that vein to keep all of our art alive as long as we possibly can. That's from the heart with love. And that's how we feel about copyright. God bless.